my name is Kat, and today I got some more book reviews for you guys. So I had a pretty good reading month in February, both quantity and quality-wise. I read 5 books in February, so I'm right on track with my goal of about a book a week. And I really enjoyed what I read this month, so I'm very excited to tell you guys about these books. Let's get started. So the first book I want to talk about here is Rain the Earth by A.C. GAUGHEN. This was the Booksplosion Book of the Month pick for February. We're working with Bloomsbury on this one. And the live show for this book has already happened. So I'll go ahead and link that down below if you've read this and you're interested in watching our in-depth spoilery discussion. For those of you who haven't read this book, it is the first in a new fantasy series. Basically, we're following the story of a teenage girl named Shalia who has grown up in the desert with her nomadic people, and she is just about to enter an arranged marriage to kind of broker a peace treaty between the desert and this other nearby kingdom who've been fighting for ages. However, on the day of her wedding, she discovers 2 things. First, she learns that her new husband is completely obsessed with destroying the Elemente, the people in this world who have the power to control elements. And when I say obsessed, I mean like full-on obsessed. He is completely fueled by hate. He wants to kill them and torture them and just eliminate them completely. The other thing that Shalia discovers is that she is actually one of the Elemente herself. She has the ability to control the element of earth. And obviously this puts her in a very tense and scary situation, because not only is she a 17-year-old girl navigating this new life in a new city with a new husband who's 10 years older than her and pretty much evil, she's also struggling with her new abilities and the fact that if anyone finds out that she has these abilities, then she's going to be put to death and her people won't be protected anymore by this arranged marriage, which is her whole motivation, to protect her people and her family. Now, I would say that this is a slower paced book as we kind of build everything up and get invested in the relationships and the politics of this world. But I actually loved that kind of slow burn aspect of this book as we gradually build and build and build, and then we get our finale, which was very action-packed and lots of twists and turns. So yeah, if you like fantasy that really delves into politics and relationships and kind of explores this young woman's journey as she comes into her power, both her ability to control Earth and her agency, her power in that sense, then I would definitely recommend this. So I do want to note that this book did feel quite mature for a YA. There's nothing too graphic or explicit, but we are following a young woman who is entering into this marriage and dealing with pressure to produce an heir and to maintain this fragile alliance. And yeah, she's not really dealing with typical teenage problems, you know? But yeah, again, I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a very strong first book in a new series, and I cannot wait to get my hands on book 2, especially after that explosion of an ending. I cannot wait to see where we go from here. The next book that I want to talk about here is Nice Try, Jane Sinner by LIANNE OELKE. Now, I wasn't intending to read this book. I wasn't even intending to buy it. At least not when I did. But I was at the airport and I decided that I wasn't feeling any of my Kindle books, so I decided to go to the bookstore and I saw this, and I remember hearing Emma Books talk about how much she loved it, and I was like, okay, Emma recommends it, let's give it a go. So I started reading this on the plane, and I fell in love with it immediately. And I didn't finish it on the plane. So I was reading this book when I was at baggage waiting for my suitcase. And I was reading this book on the shuttle. And I was reading this book in the taxi with the light on my phone just to see the pages. The basic setup of this story is that about halfway through Jane's senior year of high school, something happens and she just cannot bring herself to go back to that school and face her classmates again. She can't do it. So she ends up enrolling in community college to finish her high school diploma. And Jane has this goal in attending community college to reinvent herself and to become a different person than who she was in high school. She ends up joining this student-run reality TV kind of thing where she basically gets to live in this house rent-free, but there's cameras all over the house, and she is a part of this like competition reality show where each week or so someone else gets sent home, kicked out of the house. So that's the general premise of this book, and if that sounds interesting to you, then you'll probably like this. But for me, I was kind of like, on the premise. The winning aspect of this book for me is hands down Jane Sinner's narration. She's so cynical and sassy and smart and hilarious, and I just love her voice so much. Like, I definitely got way more invested in the reality TV show plot than I anticipated, and that is like full credit goes to Jane's voice. I just loved her so much. Like, I related to her and I wanted to be her. Like, the way she strategizes is so smart and cunning. She is my Slither Claw hero. I love her. So yeah, I was completely surprised by how much I loved this book, and I would definitely recommend it, especially if you're looking for YA books that are more on the upper end of YA, like YA adult crossover type stuff, because she is 17, 18 in this novel and dealing with like college life. I desperately want more YA books that deal with college life, because you're still a young adult in your early 20s, okay? It cuts off at 18 thing is nonsense. It's malarkey. Like, honestly, that's why so many people in their 20s are still reading YA, because they still relate to these kinds of characters and these kinds of struggles, but there aren't a ton of books that focus on like college age struggles in the adult world. And in YA, for some reason, publishers hate publishing books like that. But yeah, anyways, I really enjoyed this book and I want more people to read it. Like, I just want to encourage as many people as possible to maybe jump onto Amazon or Barnes & Noble or wherever you can read the first few pages of this book to kind of get a feel for Jane's voice. And if you like the first few pages, if you like Jane's narration, you will like this book. And yeah, I loved it. I hope you guys check it out. The next book that I have here is The Power by Naomi Alderman. I bought this book last year when it came out because my friend Monica was raving about it. She loved it. It was one of her favorites of last year. Like, my friends have the best taste in books. I get all of my recommendations like directly from them these days. Now, this book is kind of difficult to describe because it is so unlike anything else I've ever read previously. This book essentially takes place in a world that is just like our own current modern world. But then these reports start coming out of young girls who have the ability to control electricity. And soon it's not just reports. It's all women have this new power. So this book kind of takes place over about a decade from when the power first started appearing to kind of this grand finale point that it ends at. But the way it's framed is what makes it especially interesting, because it's presented as kind of a non-fiction historical account of what was happening that is being written by someone 5,000 years in the future and looking back at this time period and kind of documenting what happened to the world when all the women started developing this power and how it changed society and the dynamics of gender. And it's just wild and fascinating and thrilling and horrifying, and what a book. Now, because it's presented as kind of a historical textbook, I would say that the story isn't the strongest. Like, again, it spans over the course of about a decade, and we are following many major players in this global event. Like, the scope of the story is huge. It affects everyone in the world. So there were some parts of like the story arc that weren't as cohesive as I would have liked, but the writing, the ideas, the way it's presented, it was mind-blowing. So yeah, I really enjoyed doesn't feel like the right word, but I was utterly captivated and fascinated by this book. It was beautifully written and mind-blowing at times, but also kind of just how I would expect it to be if this were the situation. Like, It's a very powerful book. If you're interested in original speculative fiction or gender dynamics or just like fascinating books, then I would definitely recommend this. Though I would caution young readers and readers who are sensitive to like graphic depictions of assault. Definitely a content warning for sexual assault in this book. But yeah, personally, I was just blown away by this book. Definitely recommended if everything I've been saying sounds interesting to you. Check this one out. And finally, the last two books I have to talk about today are Three Dark Crowns and One Dark Throne by Kendare Blake. These are the first two books in what is going to be a quartet. I almost said chordology for some reason. The general idea of the series is that on this island, into every generation, triplet queens are born. And once the three sisters reach the age of 16, they are able to take the crown, but only one of them can be alive when that happens. So it's basically a fight to the death between these three sisters, and the winner will become queen. Each queen has a different power, a different gift. One is a naturalist who has power over animals. One is an elemental who has power over the elements. And one is a poisoner who has power over poison. And the queens aren't the only ones with gifts. Like, many other people on the island also have these gifts, and they kind of band together in different cities. Like, there's a naturalist city and a poisoner city. Now, I do think you need some patience going into the series because the beginning of book one is a bit slow. We have a lot to establish about this world, and the three queens are three main characters, essentially. So there's kind of four main characters and even more point of view characters. Like, we don't just see things from the perspectives of the three queens, we also see things from other people, like in their cities, in their factions, kind of. However, once we get through like the first half of this book, which I still enjoyed, it was slower, and I could tell we were like building up to like get to the good stuff. I still enjoyed reading the first half of this. It's not like it's bad and it drags. It's just, you need some patience going into it because, again, there's three main characters and their storylines are so separate in the beginning. Like, I kind of felt like I was starting three different books back to back. But it all comes together, I promise. Like, it's a complicated situation, you know? You have three sisters who have to kill each other because only one of them can be queen. But because you're spending pretty much equal time with each of the three queens, and you kind of get equally invested in each of their stories, I still don't know who I want to win or what I want to happen. If they can like subvert the process or something and they can all live and be happy together, if that's even possible, I don't know. I actually have about 100 pages left in book two, and I am both very excited to get back into it and finish this and see what happens. I'm probably going to finish it tonight, but I'm also scared because like no one feels safe in this series. Like I feel like even a main character could die at any time. And like, I'm nervous, you know? I'm nervous. But for the most part, I am just loving watching everything unfold. Because again, once you get into the world, once you get past like the setup and the introductions and stuff, things get wild and awesome. And again, these are YA books that don't quite feel like YA. Like, they're 16, but if they were 20 years old instead, it wouldn't feel that different, I don't think. And especially with this series, with the amount of separate storylines and characters, like it definitely has more of an adult fantasy vibe to it. Though again, there's nothing too graphic or scandalous or anything. It's just like the tone and the kind of framing of the novel feels more like adult fantasy, because it is so complex. So yeah, overall, I am really enjoying the series. I love the world. I love the scope of everything. I love how complex it is. I love the main characters, and I love how invested I am in each of them and how like scared I am for each of them. I'm just loving the series so far, and especially at the end of book one, we've started going in some interesting different directions, and now in book two, we're playing even more on that and building even more on that, and I'm loving it. I'm loving it. If you like complex high fantasy where you kind of get to see all sides of the situation and there's lots of ambiguous morality, then you should check this series out, 'cause it's good. I am really, really enjoying it. All right, that is it. Those are the books I recently read, and that's gonna do it for this video today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a wonderful night, and I will have another video up soon, so I will see you then. Goodbye! I'm using that new lens again, so you're like too far away. High five!